Well, it's been a few weeks since I last updated everybody on the status of the ski Nautique boat. So this episode is about just a summary of everything I've done and its first start. Yay! Well, I guess the first place to start is where all the wiring is. So I use this front floorboard for the wiring and put in a real fuse box, a master battery switch, and a dual bus bar for grounding, and then another dual bus bar you can see up at the top for all the gauges to attach to. So when the ignition system is powered up, the gauges get powered up, and a real fuse box. So that should help with a lot of things. And got rid of all the fuses that were mounted up here on the dash, and used the holes for a new set of switches. So the switches are for the top row where the fuses were, for the blower, and then the ignition, and then the start, a temporary switch. And then I put in a mount for my Garmin GPS and used one of the lower switches for the GPS, and then I have an open one. And you can see that I have a bilge pump alarm. So the bilge pump is wired directly to the battery. So even if the battery switch is off, the bilge pump is still got power. And over here, I use those two switches for the horn and the lights just as it was, and have holes left over for where those fuses were. So that's the dash panel and the changes there. So back here, there was no raw water filter, so I attached one right there. I think that's where most people put them. And put a new starter solenoid in, and all new wires. The only existing wires that I used were for the gauges. Everything is all new. And as you can see, the masterpiece up here is a new electronic distributor. And that was a challenge. It's an MSD distributor, and it was made for 351 Ford, but it was made for a normal standard motor. This is a right-hand motor, runs in reverse. So I had to take the gear off of the old distributor, and that was a bit of a challenge. The gear is very fragile, so you have to think about it as pressing the old distributor off of the gear rather than pulling the gear off of the old distributor. You have to do it very carefully. And then the shaft diameter or bore for that gear is larger than what is on the MSD. The MSD is a 1/2 inch, which is pretty standard these days. Electronic distributors don't need much of a shaft because they don't do much work. So I took it to a machine shop, had them true the gear up and sleeve it to a 1/2 inch, and then brought it back and put it on this distributor, and that works just fine. And again, I did all the plumbing, all new hoses, and new plugs, new wires. The only thing that's old on it now is the carburetor, and I suspect I'll have to replace that next month. Also, I put in a dual bus bar back here, so all the connections necessary for when the ignition is turned on go to that. And there's only one set of wires that go from the dashboard up front back to here. So all the connections are point to point. There's no double or triple stacking of wires anywhere, and there's no connecting two wires to one wire in the middle of nowhere. So it's all much better. So next, which is what you've all been waiting for, I know, the first start. Let's see what happens. I'm ready. Are you ready? I'm ready. Let's go. I think we're ready to give her a shot. What do you think, Jim?
Go for it.
Let's see if this silly thing fires up without blowing up. Ignition. Well, a couple more squirts of gas. So I think it's let's put the light on it and make sure that our timing is still right.
Still got a little water leak.
Yeah. Doesn't seem like it's the first time. Make sure we're still on cylinder number 1. And that would be this guy. That guy and that guy. Make sure all this doesn't get fouled up in something. That's pretty close. It's not 10 degrees, it's about 5 degrees before top dead center. So right now I'm thinking it's fuel, because if I pump it, and then start it, let's
You want to try using some WD-40 as ether, just spray in the carburetor and try to keep it running a little while?
now I think there's something not quite right. Let's double check the wires again.
Okay.
And make sure they're all good. But something is, and we are on number 1, so that is number 1. You can turn the water off. Did we get any water out the back?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, because it's, oh, it should be. Okay, a few things to check, and we'll be right back. See if you can see gas being sprayed in.
Flashlight's over there now, I think. See your flashlight, please. Yes, it is.
Okay. Let's give it a little boost. It's trying.
Water's coming out too.
Okay, let's give this one more shot. And we know the battery's weak, so we're using Jim's ultimate charger that gives us 100 amps for cranking. And turn the ignition on. Sounds good. Tank is reading 100. Oil pressure is reading 40, 50, maybe 50 pounds oil pressure. The tank is reading 1,000, which is a little high. We're charging 14, so the alternator is working. Still got drips here. Showing 90 degrees. So this is not open yet. Now we're getting smoke.
Smoke. This is just
So we're steam. Could that be steam? Smell it.
It'll be gone by the time I get there. Slow as I am. It's gone.
Well, she runs. She charges the battery. She runs. Carburetor is off. I had to open the throttle to get it to run. So at what it thinks should be idle is not enough. And it's probably because some of the jets are clogged, is my thinking. So the next thing to replace on this will be the carburetor, rather than try to get it rebuilt. It's, you know, it's 1976, so it's not going to make it. This is leaking right up here, and that seems to be just because this casting is so rugged that it just isn't suitable for, you know, being locked down. But she runs. So all that work, it looks like we won. It looks like we won. Awesome. Awesome. I'm glad I fixed that propeller clearance.